creating a new topic. It's still under HTML, but this time around is HTML form. So I have a presentation for you guys. So an HTML form is used to collect user input. The user input is most often sent to the server for processing, and that's most often. So sometimes you might use the input in the client side, but most of the reason why you collect the form is maybe to submit it and to access stuff on it to further crunch the data. You can use it to create any information, but the idea of what we're covering today is about forms, collecting information from the user. Starting from the beginning, a form element is a container for different type of inputs that you might want to collect. There are several inputs that you can collect from the user, or several forms of input, the way the form should look like, and you will be discovering them as we go on. So there are several forms of inputs. But all these inputs, you have to start with something, and that thing you have to start with is a form element. You need to declare the form element before you can go ahead to start capturing your input. Just the same way you have to specify the body before you can start putting the content of the HTML body inside. So it's as a requirement, you need to specify the form element first, or the form tag first, before you then continue with the subsequent inputs that you want to collect from the user. So one of the most important input input you'll be working with is the input element, and it's one of the most complex elements you will deal with in HTML. The input HTML element is used to create interactive control for web-based forms in order to accept data from the user. All what we're trying to talk about today is collecting information from the user, collecting data from the user. How an input works varies considerably, depend on the type of input you are requesting from the user. Most of us have used forms, and you will notice that these forms have different way of collecting information depending on what it is that we want to collect. So a place where it will ask you for a name, a place it will ask you for phone number, you have to put it has to be a telephone, a place it will ask you for a file. So you can't use the same input to capture different information. So what that means is that there are specific input for specific requests that you want to ask from the user. So what I've listed here on the right hand side is the type of input that you can have. This is just I think I'm missing 3 or 4 more, but I'm just focusing on this. There are quite a lot of inputs. So we have a button, meaning an input can be in a form of a button, because you clicking a button, you are also submitting, or you are requesting inputs, even though that sounds complex. You clicking a button, you are also submitting an input. It's a form of input. So a button is a form of input. And you have the checkbox. You've seen checkbox on the browser before. We're going to go through all these buttons, by the way, so rather all these inputs, so no need to worry. So this only tag input allows you to do 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, like 18 of these things. We're going to cover the ones we can cover in this lesson. So it does checkbox. It allows you to specify color. It allows you to say that, I want to capture only date. It allows you to say you want to capture email and all the rest that you send there. The other part that we're going to also treat is what we call label. Now we're going to treat them side by side, because you use one in conjunction with the other. By the time you display, this is what I want to collect from the user, then how do you highlight what that information is? For example, if you say, I want to get your name, you provide that input. Then what capture the name, what caption do you use to capture the name is called a label. So the HTML label, represents a caption for an item of a user interface. So if you provide a text box to capture some information, you need to also use a label to display to the user, this is your intention of what you want to capture. So label have a lot of functions that you will see when we go to the demo. This is the last slide I have. From this slide now we'll go into the coding side. Click on your label and then your input get triggered. We're going to see those examples right away. So let's go to the code and start making things happen. I want to put it to use. I want to make our form beautiful, not just do only form. So I want it to also be beautiful. So we are doing a registration form or application form, maybe applying for, let's do registration form. Maybe registration for a form or for a website, registering to a website. So that could be the example. And remember our table definition. We have our TR to denote that we want a role, and then you have a TD to denote that you want to start with the data. I have a design in my head, and the design is that let's put a border so that you can see what I'm working towards. My design is so that, let me make it, width is equal to 100%. So my design is that I have a two column. The first one will carry a kind of a background. I want to do an effect with what I'm doing. We'll carry a kind of background to denote the banner for the registration, while the right hand side will carry the form of what we are trying to do. So that's the design I'm carrying forward for us to do. So having that in mind, I can remove the border because I'm assuming that we are used to our TD here, the column, this section. So I'm safe to remove this border. Then that means it won't be displayed, we won't be seeing it, but we have it in the back of our mind that that border is there. Okay, I'm going to remove this one as well. I don't want to start funky sizing, putting design yet. I want to first, get the big guy out of the table. Let's start designing first. Then we'll go to, let's start bringing the elements to light first. Then we'll start designing, because now I'm yet to introduce anything to you guys. So let me first keep it as simple as possible. Let's start. The requirements state that we have to start with a form. So we do our form element. Do you see that? Nothing special, we just create a form element. Whatever goes into that form element has to be an input, and any other thing. You can still declare your proper or your normal HTML inside the form element. You can still do your bold and other tag. You can do that within the form element. However, all your input elements that you want to work with has to be inside the form element. So this is the proper way. The next thing for us to do is we have two methods, but since I'm just explaining this to you for the first time, I'll just show you the syntax so that you can move on from there. I'll just first show you the syntax, then I'll add other things to make it look good. First of all, the syntax is to first specify input. So immediately you specify input, you can see our input box is showing right there, and that is just how basic it is. The first default thing that your text input default to is a text type, meaning it allows you to enter text. You can see very simple, just one line and we have this. Of course, the more detail we specify, the more we get to see definite interface. And from our presentation, we are aware that input has almost 18 type of specialty, which we will address. Okay, so this is just to show you how input looks like. And you can go further by specifying the type of input. By default, the type is text, so nothing changes. Then if you want to change the type, you could just specify it here and you say, oh, you want date, and look at what happens. Miraculously, everything just changed to date. That's how complex the input element is. All the options that you have in that attributes that you could do is available here. So you could just change your mind and say, oh, you want to deal with button. Yes, button. It sounds strange. Button is also a form of input. You can see it's a button, but we're not saying, you can see it's getting clicked, but you didn't specify the value. And that gives us the next part of the attributes that you can specify in an input box, which is value. Value talks about the current display that should be available on that input box. So this one, I will just say a button. Since it's a button that we're looking at here, I'll just say it's a button. But if it was to be a text box, you might say the default value should be maybe high. That's what is going on here. So you've been able to see two attributes. The first attribute would tell you the type of input you want to work with. Remember, we have quite a lot of input. We have button, checkbox, color, date, email, hidden, numbers. We have quite a lot. We're going to run through most of them, by the way, so not to be in a hurry. So you can even try email out. So if you try email out, it allows you to provide email information there. So anything you put there, it will make sure that is in form of an email. That's the work of what you have there, you specifying that the type is an email. So let's scrap everything we've done and start all over again by introducing something else. We're not starting over again, we're just introducing something new. So because we are doing a registration form, one of the requirements we ask for someone doing a registration is their name. So I will go ahead and say the type of what I want to ask is a text and the value will be blank for now. Or since there's no value, I can just remove the value attribute. The next thing I want to show is label. Label, you know, we talked about label and we said label is what is used to show what we are trying to capture. Look at this now. It's just a plain text box. You have no idea what it is. You know, so for you to tell your user that this is for this, so you need to put what we call label, a label tag or label element, and then inside the label you specify that full name, or you can put, yeah, you can do name, and then you have it this way. Even though you could as well do this, and it will still be fine. But the purpose of using label is far more, the advantage is way more than just having a normal elements like this, just say name. The label allows you to programmatically click on the label and it will default to the input box here. It has more advantage when you use label than when you just have it there as the name. Okay, we've been able to explain the label and the text. Let's now go into more practical approach to what is going on here. So let me make the font quite big so that we can see what's going on there. Okay, but our text box is not getting bigger. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is, even though I've not taught you guys CSS, I just want to increase the size of this so that what we are doing can be way visible. So font size, I want to make this one 20. Let me say 25. Okay, let's move on. So what I've been able to show you guys is I've been able to show you input text, and I've been able to also show you the label responsible for it. The next thing I want to show you guys is why is the label very important. The continuation. Now we have this label and input. The idea is that we want to see why is label better than just using the normal info. What I want to do here is there's something we call ID. ID is an attribute that is available to all elements. All elements, you can use ID to all elements, on all elements is a universal attribute that all elements can have. You can create ID, you can do ID something here. And the purpose of ID is to allow you to programmatically control that element. The purpose of ID is to give it a name, to give an element a name that can be programmatically controlled by JavaScript. The purpose of having an ID is so that you can have it, controlled by JavaScript. So I'm going to give this a name, and I'm going to say full name, that's F name. Then I will come here and say this label is for who? Is for full name. Now me doing this automatically, me clicking here will give control to what? The text box. Let me do that again. If I click on the name here, watch what happens to the text box. it glows and is allowing me to receive input. That is phenomenal. You cannot achieve that with this. You cannot achieve that with this. Do you see that? Do you see the difference? This is the advantage of using label. So I need to show you that, because when you are working with form, you should know that you want to make the user's life easy. And anything that will make the user life easy is you should subscribe to it. So doing this makes this active. Very important. You can see how you solve that problem. And another thing I want to show you now, we're going to a little bit of design. We'll be doing design along the way. You have various ways to present a form. You can either present a form this way or you present it this way. Meaning you can do name and the object on the bottom. This is just presentation. And you've seen your mobile phone whereby they even provide the name of the form or the input inside the text box. We've seen all these things before. These are the things that you are supposed to be responsible for. User interface, you know, the way you design your app is unique to you and what have you. So I'm just going to pick this design, right, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is that let's go ahead and start building the form we intend to build. Now I can start designing and make it look a little bit pretty for us to use. So even though we've not added other things, I'll be teaching you other parts as I'm adding the type of forms. Remember, the type of form that I've just shown you now is just text. There are a couple of others that I've not shown you. What I've been able to successfully introduce now is the label and the input and the type of text. What I want to do next is to design this form so it looks a little bit prettier. So let's go with the designing. The first thing I want to do here is to put a kind of a background here. I have a design in my head. I want to put a background on the left hand side, and on the right hand side is a form that shows what we are doing. You know, so that's the picture I have in my head. So while I'm doing that, let's go get us a background. I think I have one already. I've not saved it, but I have it. I will show you guys. I call it flying. Show you guys here. So I have this guy here, but I hope it's gonna be a very good picture. This is like Superman or something. So let's copy this guy and see. Hope it's a big picture. So let's save it. It's not even coming in good. Okay, we have it like this. It's saving as JPEG. That's a sizable width. I'll just use this part of it and put it here to form our background so that we can have our form going there. We can have different kind of look to it. So let's and it can even be the background of the entire. In fact, let's make it the background of the application and let's bring it out. So I'm having a different thought about the whole thing. Right, so let's go ahead and save this. We'll put this on, we can do drag and drop. Then just drag this here and we'll call this BG, or BG for background. And what just came to my mind is that we'll make this the full background and we'll make the form come out. The form will kind of come out of this background. So that's the idea of what we want to do. So let's go in. This is our form. The intention, as I've mentioned, is to make it our background. So we might not need to use table again. So we already know how to bring background in. So let's try that. We do background image and URL in small letter. Then we just do bg.jpg. And there we go. And so you now need to clean this up because the image is small, so we need to blow it out. First of all, you tell it not to repeat. Background, no repeat. So So the next thing is we need to stretch it to fill the whole gap. I think there's a background cover or something size. Yes, we can do cover. Okay, we got a really bad picture. So let's give it a try again. Got a really bad picture. Picture is not good. What we need to do right now is to create the table in such a way that it will be different from the background. You can see the way the table is mixed with the background. I want to make the table in such a way that it will just come out. So you might not even need table again. Let's remove the whole of the table. So we only have the form. What I can do with the form is, the form also has a style attribute, by the way. You could also style the fonts, the form rather. So what I'm interested in is to set the background color to be white. That way our form is standing out. So what I also want to do is, you can see that the form is too close to the edge. You want to keep it inside, like create a kind of a form or a padding between each of them. Let me introduce you to another element that I'm about to talk about now, and that is a div element, which I've not mentioned to you guys. Now the purpose of a div element is a block element that allows you to put other elements inside it. So you can use it to do this kind of arrangement, whereby you can then style it individually. So I'm about to style everything inside here, as opposed to styling the form on itself. So if I come here, I can style this and apply my margin. Okay, so we have the name, which is highlighted here. The next thing we want to capture in the form registration is, so we have the full name. Let's change this to full name. We have the full name, and this part here talks about the name itself that you want to capture. So for the purpose of styling, we can specify the width to be 100. So that way any inputs that we have should have this kind of with 100 kind of effect, so that you can come here and put the name inside there. The next thing you want to do is to allow you to put the next form. So we're going to be using break to kind of create this effect, so that you can have this next input that follows. So we can duplicate everything we have here and provide the next input. So the next input we want to provide is an email. So because we are doing a form registration, we should even do a proper title. So let's have a title here and call it H1 and put registration form. So that one is displayed to the user for them to see. Okay, so we have our registration form sitting right there. The next thing that we want to do is to capture, let's reduce the font now, since it's looking as if we have much content. So the form, yeah, it's better now this way. So now the next thing we want to capture is the email. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's type it out instead of copying and paste, so that we get used to the syntax. So we'll do label, and what's label for? The label is for email. Then the content will be email. You can say email address. Then you go to the next line, you use a BR so that it will break and go to the next line. The next line is where you specify the inputs. The type of the input, you then specify email because it's email you want to capture. Next thing that follows is the ID. The ID will be email to tally with what is used for. That's in your label. Followed by, and that will just be it. Notice the input element. The input element uses what we call a close tag. It doesn't have an input. It doesn't have a content. Input element does not have a content. That's another thing you should note. It doesn't have a content. So the next thing I want to explain to you is want to introduce a new attribute. And that attribute, okay, we'll introduce that attribute at the end because there are other attributes apart from the type and ID that you're seeing. So I'm just introducing those attributes one at a time so that you get to see the usage. The next thing that follows here that I want to introduce is more of like password. But I'm going to use HR to denote a line so that we can have a next view there. Okay, the next thing we want to do right now is to then provide a password. To provide a password, let's repeat the same thing. Instead of, I'll just copy and paste since we should be used to the syntax now. I'll copy and paste and change the parameter that we need to change. So we change for, that is for a password. We change the ID here to password. Then the label here will be title password to read the correct information. Then the type should be what? Password. Remember, password is a type of input. So immediately you put password here, what do you think happens here? It becomes, a password kind of field. Let's type the rest. You can see that it's accepting email. Then here, of course, it's accepting. Yeah, here in terms of accepting email, we'll come here and I'll tell you how this works. So here is as accepting text. So the next thing I want to show you is checkbox. But before I go into checkbox, I want to, okay, let's just go into checkbox. Let's go into checkbox. Again, we'll provide a break here so that we can have this view broken down. So let's go ahead with what we're talking about. Let's go ahead with what we're talking about. So we're talking about the password, and we've been able to add password. So we've captured the text, we've captured email, we've captured password. The next thing we want to be able to capture is checkbox, because maybe there will be a checkbox that says, are you sure you want to agree to terms and conditions or something. So let's do a checkbox. The same thing applies. In fact, with label, I'm going to copy everything again, and you're going to see what I'm going to change this time around. I told you that the input box is one of the most complex elements in HTML. So it's being written differently, and I'm going to show you the alternative method of working with a label. An alternative method of working with a label. You could actually put your input inside a label. Yes, you could actually do what? Put your input inside a label, and it will look like this, such that you can now say this one, we're working with checkbox now, so the type should be what? Checkbox. So look at what happened. Immediately you say checkbox, do you see that checkbox is available for us there? But because we style everything to be 100%, that's why we're having this funny look of a checkbox. So I'm going to default it to look normal. I'm going to make it look normal, and manually just give this guy width of 90%. I'm going to give them manually for now, because I don't want to have to teach you CSS yet. CSS is almost there. We're almost at CSS. So let's do this like this. So I'm going to add this to all the individual email, the full name, the password, right? And then come here. The ID is not password. We're not going to do ID for it. Remember, the purpose of us using ID is so that we can align this to this. When we say for ID, and I use it to teach you the method of which you can programmatically connect a label to an input box. Another way to also connect a label to any input box is to wrap it inside. You can see the way I wrap it. I wrap the label inside the input, so that way anytime I click on the label, the input will be clicked. Let me show you that. So I'm about to click on the label now called password, and let me give it a proper name and say I agree with the terms and conditions. So once you now select this, notice what happened to the checkbox get checked, right? That's the effect of having a label. I'm going to delete the label, and you're going to see the negative effect it's going to have on it. So if you remove the label and you just have this, it still looks nice. You can see that it's still looking nice. But if you try to do this, you see that it's not working. That's not working. So I have to do the label thing. The label thing makes it more easy to use. So you can see the advantage of using a label. Anytime you use your form, you must use a label. It gives the user the completeness. It makes your whole thing, what you're trying to do, makes it complete. Without the label, it's just not complete. The experience from the user perspective is not complete. Okay, let's move on to other things that we have quite a lot of things we need to cover, and we've just covered only 3. This is checkbox. Checkbox allows you to select multiple options. So let me give you another scenario of this checkbox. Checkbox allows you to select options that are grouped together. So let's say this is agree with terms and condition, and I'm going to say something else like subscribe to our newsletter, right? So imagine the label now. I'm going to create another duplicate of this form. So let me even start from beginning. I'm not going to copy and paste. I'm trying to be avoiding copy and paste so that you will understand what I'm doing. So here I'm about to provide another label option, or rather another check box option, so that you see the benefits of having it. So I have label, right? And inside the label, I want to have an input box that is type of checkbox. So the next thing is for me to capture the label, or the description of what it is we're trying to do. So now this will be, we can have subscribe to our newsletter. Yeah, that could just be that, subscribe to our newsletter. So you can do this, so you can see how you can easily select this, right? So I'm about to give you another option, and this option this time around, I want it to be on the right hand side. Should I put it on the right hand side, or let me put it on the bottom, because we have so many things coming in again. Let me put it on the right hand side, and I want to use table to do that. I want to put another option on this right hand side. So let's go. What I want to do right now is I want to provide table here, and I have my TR and I have my TD, which will be 2 of them. The first TD is going to carry all of this, and the second TD is going to be what I want to do next. I want to introduce another kind of input. So you can see the first one is sitting right here, and the second one will be here. I'll just call it column so that you see it. You can see the space that is occupying. So, but what I want to do right now is, this one is too much. I want to reduce just agree. I'll just say agree with terms. I'll just say agree with terms. That's cool. And we have options for us to do cell spacing and padding, because you can see that it's too close by. So I want to fire in that cell spacing and padding. So I'll do cell spacing. I can just do 10. Let's do padding rather, cell padding. So you can see it forces that space, which looks good. Let's go ahead with what we want to capture. The next thing I want to demo to you guys is radiobox. Radiobox allows you to select one option from the group of options available. Radiobox allows you to select one option from group of options available, and its method of declaration is also different. So follow me and let's see how we implement this one. Okay, so to start with this, of course, you start with your label. You can either use any of the methods that I've been using above. You saw the one where I have the ID. You saw the one that I wrapped it around. So you could decide on any one you want to use. So let's use the one I wrapped it around so that we don't have too much ID flying up and down. So let's have the one that will have it wrapped around. So we have our label, and here is going to be what's going to happen inside here is our input. We're going to put our input, close it. Our input, the type is going to be radio. The type is going to be radio. So the next thing that we then need to do is, that's how the radio looks like. You can see the difference between a radio and a check. A check is a square, a radio is a circle. So the next thing we need to introduce is we need to introduce something we call name. This name allows us to be able to say that, to group radios together. By default, checkboxes are not connected to themselves. Checkboxes are just by themselves. Just check as much as you can check. But radio are grouped together, and we use names to group them together. So this radio is, I want to say, I'm trying to look for options that we want to capture now for this registration form. So I can say age brackets. So let's use age brackets since we don't have any example we can use. So I'll just say age range. We can use age range because you have to pick one of the age ranges available. So the name is age range, and we then go ahead and specify what the label should display for the user. Then we can start from, we'll start from higher to lower. So let's say from 50 to 40. Let's say 40 to 50. 40 to 50 years. Right? That's the idea. I'm going to duplicate this now since we understand the writing of this. We're going to duplicate this, and we have it this way. We duplicate, and this time around I'm going to change the value. Instead of 40 to 50, I'm going to make it 30 to 40. 30 to 40. We're just going to have 3 options, and then we'll move on. Then, by the way, you can use your break BR so that it will break it down. And let's have the final option on the bottom, then we can move on. Then let's just say 18 to 30. 18 years to 30. Then we use our break as well to break it down. We say 18 to 30. Or 18 to 30. 30 years old. So look at what is going to happen here. When you do this, you can see what it does. It circles through the options that you have. It circles through the options that you have. So when you do subscription picks as many checkboxes as you want, while a radio box allows you to circle within options that is tied to the same name. Options that is tied to the same name. So they must be tied to the same name. If they're not tied to the same name, it will treat them separately. So it means you can have another options apart from age range and call it something else. They have to be tied to the same name for it to work like this, to make it an option to make it an optional value. So recap now, we've been able to do text, normal text, email, we've been able to do password, we've been able to do checkbox, radio box. I want to quickly check what else do we need to do so that we can, let's look at what we have in our slide. So we have, we'll do dates, we'll do numbers, and we'll do submit. Date, numbers, and submit. Let's quickly do that. Let's achieve that. Date, number, and submit. Let's see where we can easily slot our dates. Let's see where we can easily slot our dates. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do name. After the full name, we'll do our date of birth. Number. So what I want to do is to play with this column here in such a way that we can have two columns, and I want to use the table. So we are used to table now, so I want to use table to do this section, so that I put one of the data in one TD, I put the second data that's going to contain our age in the second TD, or I can have that in email, put email address there, so that we can put our age and which one did I even say, and number, age. So let's put full name and email in the same place. So let's quickly do that. So if I go to where our name is here, you have to be able to navigate through your code. Very important. The skill to do that is phenomenal. You have to be able to do all these things. So we have our email here, we have our registration form. This is what is responsible for the full name. So underneath our H1, I create a table quickly, and very easy, TR and TD. You have to create two of them. So you copy everything in the full name. I copied it here and I paste here in the first TD. You can see it takes up all those sections that you have there. Then you can go and do the same thing to the second one, which is the email section here, and you copy it inside the section for the TD there, and you are done. Not necessarily done. I remove all the breaks that we have there. You can see all the break that we have. So let's see what's happening to this guy. Number one, it's not stretched to 100%. That's why it's looking like this. So let's stretch it to 100% by doing our width here for our table to be 100%. Okay, so we can use this one. This one is good. It's good. So the next part is that we want to replicate this at the bottom. But this time around now, we are now providing a date, and we are making use of also a number. So what field can we use to capture dates? So I'm going to duplicate this page just quite easily. Duplicate the table, and I'm going to run it after our TR, or rather our HR. Then I'm going to break this section here. But let me just break this one instead of running our HR. So you can see the duplicate there. We are changing this second part to something new, and want to capture date. I will say user date, that's U date. Then the ID of this one is U date. Then this one I will call date of resumption date, because I want to call the second one date, your age. I want to call it age so that we can capture numbers. Okay, I have that there. The next thing I want to do is, instead of it now being text, it will be dates. So you can see we've been able to capture dates element there. The next section is what we want to do with numbers. So we'll come here, it's already here. I will call it, want to capture age. So we do age, or we can say U age, that's user age. Then here we say number, That way it will allow us to capture number. The ID is UH. Then instead of saying email address here, we just say your age. Because we have telephone itself, there's also a telephone data type. I don't want us to use telephone because you will rarely be using telephone, so you will be capturing number more than telephone. So because telephone number is not a number because it starts with 0 something 0, so numbers is not supposed to be starting with 0. If it starts with 0, it has to proceed with dots like 0.57 or something, but phone number doesn't really follow that format. So phone number are very funny, so that's why I'm not capturing that for now. So those one will be maybe after this class. We can't finish all the inputs in this class, so this will actually take us to the next class. Okay, so what you will notice now is that I've been able to separate these stuffs, and we've have more control or more input in what we are doing. So let's test the last thing we want to capture. So let's just test it out. If you play with this, you get to see the info. Here you can put your numbers. You can see that it's just a name. I just gave it a name. It doesn't mean anything. I don't just want to say, you can say age. You can say age. You can say dates. I didn't just want to repeat the same name I call it. And another thing you will notice is that we will start giving things name from now on. By the time we start getting to CSS, we will start naming things. We just start giving things names that it's understandable by us. So let me give you what that means. There are some parts whereby you have to follow the requirement of the system. That's syntax. You follow the syntax. Look at this type. It say number. You can't put something else here. You can't. It has to be what it is. But in this case, where you have ID, the system is allowing you to express yourself in what you want to put. It can be anything. The same thing applies to for. So it's assuming that whatever you specify in your ID should be here. There are points whereby it's you that will specify what you want to say. Just like when we have full name. The computer does not know what this is all about. It's you that will say that it's full name you want to capture. What the computer is interested in is that just put the proper syntax to capture input elements. The proper syntax says that you have to put angle brackets. You have to type input. Once you put type, you have to put all of the types that is allowed. Then you have to do other things. So all those things are format are required. However, other things like ID, you can provide whatever you want to capture inside, any kind of ID. That's why I was able to put your date and no error came up. You can put anything. So we are getting towards those areas whereby you will now be using it. You will now start using your initiative to create things, to say what they should be. The part that you are fixed, that you must know, all these things I are saying. We are getting, look at this one now, for example, the content is based on whatever we want the content to be, registration form. We're getting to that part whereby you start defining what things should be. Okay, let's move on. The last thing we want to capture, I think, is the button for today's lesson. We want to capture button for today's lesson. That's the submit button for today's lesson. You guys should give me, we want to provide the last button for today, or rather the last input for today, which is the submit button. Let's quickly make that happen. We're going to put the button on the bottom right here, or we can just do it on the center. That could be a thing, or we can put it anywhere. But let's put it on the center to make our form looks good. So we'll just go to the bottom of the page where you can see where the form ends, and then we have the div. You can come here and provide our inputs, and type is what? Submit. Then we close that input, so you can see our button right there. It's just waiting right there. So to provide more context to what we are saying, I want to give it a little visual appeal. I don't know if it's looking nicer or not. Okay, so yeah, we have our form there. The next thing for us to do is to specify what the value is. That's what is displayed. By default is displaying submit, but wants to display register now. You can allow it to say anything that you want. So this is what we want to display here. Now I want to click the button, and once you click the button, it submit the form. That's the ideal thing that it does, is submit to the server. But I want to use this opportunity to show you another attribute that is part of the HTML, or rather is part of the input attribute that I want to show you guys. The attributes I've made known to you guys are type and name and ID. There are more attributes that I want to introduce. So first I will pick I don't want to introduce it at a time. I'll just focus on the, for example, let's look at the full name. When anybody is registering, or if this person was the real person and they were registering, you will want to capture their full name. You don't want them to skip the full name and then go away. So there's an required. What that does is that make sure that that field is required before you're about to submit. So let's try and submit again now. So if you try and submit, do you see what the form says? It says, please fill out this form, writing JavaScript. You can start doing things like this. I'm going to also put something that is here to submit. See what it's going to say. Let's try and fill this form. If I come here, do you see what it's saying? Please in the email address that you've provided. And the reason why it's giving us, of course, we said this is an product for you. Don't just call. So other attributes which I don't want to bring into this video, I will say them in the next video. So I want us to go and digest this and review this. So is there any question? Do you guys have any question? Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.